I want you to take a second right now and just picture the trees in your neighborhood.
Yeah. Or, maybe the ones right out in your own front yard.
Exactly. Think about those like beautiful ancient giants that give the street all that character. The ones that, I mean, they provide all that shade in the summer, and you just admire them every time you pull into the driveway.
Right. They're practically fixtures of the landscape.
But what if I told you that you shouldn't just be admiring them? Like,
Yeah.
what if that dead oak out front might actually be a ticking time bomb?
Yeah, it is a really jarring way to look at something so natural, but understanding the hidden mechanics of your property is, well, it's exactly the perspective shift we're exploring today.
Right, because today's deep dive is pulling from a really specific, really fascinating source. We're looking at a commercial guide. It was published in March 2026 by 860 Hartford Tree Service out in Connecticut.
And on the surface, you might think it's just a guide for a local business,
Yeah.
just marketing material.
Yeah, exactly. But our mission for you today is to look right past that local marketing. Because buried in this text is, I mean, it's an absolute masterclass on the hidden biology, the extreme physics, and the honestly surprising economics of arboriculture and tree removal.
Because the goal here isn't just to talk about, chainsaws and wood chips. We want to understand the actual mechanisms of why these massive, seemingly invincible structures fail, and how professional intervention is essentially a highly engineered rescue operation.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yep.
Because I think the best way to frame this whole thing is to compare the structural integrity of a tree to the foundation of a house.
That's a really good analogy, actually.
Right, because when you buy a house, you just take the foundation for granted. You decorate the living room, you paint the walls, but you don't think about the concrete underneath until there's a massive crack and the entire structure is compromised.
Yeah, out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. And trees are the exact same way. We look at the canopy, the leaves, the exterior bark, and we just assume that the structural foundation, the internal wood and the roots, is permanent and unyielding.
Which is, frankly, a fundamental misunderstanding of biology. I mean, before we can even talk about how to take a tree down, you really need to understand the mechanics of why these centuries-old giants fail in the first place.
Right, what's actually happening inside them.
Yeah, and a great way to visualize this is by looking at Hartford's historic neighborhoods. The text specifically mentions areas like the West End and Asylum Hill.
Oh yeah, those places are famous for these massive old maples and oaks that literally canopy the streets. It's beautiful.
It is, but when disease strikes or the root systems begin to rot, they transform from these neighborhood assets into massive kinetic liabilities.
And a lot of that transformation, from what the source says, it comes down to the weather acting as the trigger.
Right.
We're talking about severe environmental stress.
Exactly. The weather applies the load that tests that compromised structure. So take ice storms, for instance.
Ugh, ice storms are the worst.
They are, because an ice storm doesn't just make a tree look pretty, it fundamentally alters the physics of the canopy. Every single branch and twig increases its surface area as the ice accumulates.
Which has to add so much weight.
Oh, we're talking thousands of pounds of static frozen weight added to the tree. So if you have a tree that is already internally compromised, that static load is going to find the weakest point.
Right. It's just basic physics at that point.
And if it's not the static weight of winter ice, well, it's the dynamic load of violent summer microbursts from thunderstorms. The wind creates this immense lever action on the trunk. If the structural integrity is gone, failure under those conditions is an absolute certainty.
But it isn't just the physical weather doing the damage, is it? Like, there are biological threats actively hollowing out the foundation before the storm ever even hits.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, one of the most aggressive examples we found in the guide was the emerald ash borer. It's this invasive pest that has completely devastated ash tree populations, like the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, the CT-DEEP. They actually issued a very specific, honestly chilling warning about this.
Yeah, they warn that dead ash trees become incredibly brittle. And to understand why that happens, you really have to look at how the ash borer attacks the tree.
It's kind of like a horror movie for plants.
It really is. The larvae hatch under the bark, and they literally chew these serpentine galleries through the phloem and xylem. That's the tree's vascular system.
Wow. So they're just destroying the plumbing.
Right, they're severing the microscopic tubes that transport water and nutrients from the roots all the way up to the leaves.
So they're essentially strangling the tree from the inside out,
Precisely. And because the water flow stops, the wood fibers dry out entirely. They lose all their natural elasticity.
which means they can't bend anymore.
Exactly. A healthy tree swaying in the wind is like a fiberglass fishing pole. It bends, it absorbs the kinetic energy, and then it just returns to its shape. But a dead ash tree that's been drained of moisture by the ash borer, it's like a raw piece of dry spaghetti.
Oh man, that's a great visual.
Yeah, it has zero flexibility, so when the wind bends it, it simply snaps, entirely without warning.
Which brings us to, I think, the most practical part of this biology lesson, how you, the homeowner, can actually spot the danger. Because there are critical warning signs that mean a tree has crossed the line from adding character to your yard to, becoming a hazard.
Right, and some are pretty obvious.
Yeah, like deep vertical cracks in the trunk,
Yes.
or peeling bark, which the guide notes means the cambium layer underneath is already dead and detaching. But the one that really stood out to me was the shelf mushrooms.
Ah, yes, the fungal fruiting bodies.
Yeah. I look at those shelf mushrooms as basically a check engine light for a tree. You see that mushroom, and it's telling you a critical internal system has failed. But here's my question. If a tree looks totally solid and healthy on the outside, like the bark looks tough, maybe there are even some green leaves up top, how fast can it really go from character to hazard? Can a tree look completely fine to the naked eye, but actually be dead?
What's fascinating here is the biology of internal rot. The check engine light analogy is perfect, but we really need to look at what's happening under the hood.
Okay, lay it on me.
So, those shelf mushrooms you see on the bark, they're just the visible tip of the iceberg. They indicate that a massive mycelium network, a fungal infection, is actively spreading through the heartwood of the tree.
So the fungus is inside the tree.
Yes, and it survives by secreting enzymes that literally digest the structural lignin and cellulose of the wood.
So it's literally eating the structural beams of the tree.
It is dissolving the tree's internal skeleton. So to answer your question, yes, a tree can look majestic and solid on the outside because that outer layer of sapwood might still be transporting a few nutrients to the leaves.
It's putting on a good face.
Exactly. But the inside is what arborists describe as hollow mush.
Hollow mush. That sounds terrible.
It's incredibly dangerous. The solid exterior is an illusion hiding a completely dissolved core. So when those thousands of pounds of ice we talked about earlier hit a tree that is mostly a hollow mush on the inside, the exterior bark simply cannot hold the load.
And there's another warning sign we need to talk about that's purely structural, and that is sudden leaning.
Right. If a tree pitches just 15 degrees after a heavy summer storm, you have a critical failure.
Just 15 degrees. That doesn't seem like much.
It's huge for a mature tree. Trees are held up by a tension and compression system in the root plate. If the tree suddenly leans, it means the structural roots on the opposite side of the lean have physically snapped or pulled out of the soil.
Wow. So the anchor's just gone.
Anchor is gone.
So you've walked your property. You've seen the check engine light. The shelf mushrooms, the 15-degree lean, the peeling bark, and, the tree is fundamentally compromised. Now we face a massive problem. Because having a hollow mush tree leaning over your driveway is incredibly dangerous. But figuring out how to get it down is where things get truly extreme.
Yeah, you're transitioning from identifying a biological hazard to actively mitigating a physical one. And tree removal is consistently ranked among the most dangerous jobs in America.
I believe it.
Which is exactly why the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, dictates such strict safety protocols for this industry. A popular phrase in the field is, gravity is unforgiving.
Gravity is unforgiving.
If you fire up a rusty chainsaw you bought at a garage sale to tackle a massive rotting oak, you are fighting physics, and the physics will always win.
And let's add electricity to that physics equation, right?
Yeah.
Because the danger of power lines completely changes the game. In Connecticut, the guide points out that if you have branches encroaching on utility wires, it requires highly regulated handling.
Oh, absolutely.
Like Eversource, the local utility, enforces strict guidelines for electrical clearance. Because wood contains moisture, which means a tree branch can actually conduct electricity. If an amateur makes one wrong cut and a branch bridges the gap between a live wire and the ground, the result is instantly fatal.
Which is why professional tree removal is fundamentally an exercise in engineering. It's a highly calculated process that starts long before a single cut is made with a comprehensive hazard assessment.
So they're not just walking up and hacking at it.
Not at all. Professionals inspect the drop zone. They evaluate the internal structural integrity of the wood because cutting into hollow mush feels and behaves entirely differently than cutting into solid oak.
Right, you'd probably lose control of the saw or something.
Or worse. A compromised trunk could barber chair, which is when it splits violently up the middle while you're cutting it. They even have to factor in the wind speed and direction.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. I think the average person has this, like, cartoonish image of tree removal. You know, a lumberjack in a flannel shirt with an axe yelling timber as a massive trunk crashes into the forest.
Yeah, the classic stereotype.
Right. But the professional process is closer to a delicate physics experiment or like a high-wire circus act. Think about the logistics of dropping massive multi-ton limbs between two historic homes in the West End with just inches to spare.
It's incredibly tight quarters.
Exactly. So how do they control all that unpredictable kinetic energy? Like when you have thousands of pounds of wood suspended 80 feet in the air, how do you get it to the ground safely without destroying the property below?
Well, they do it by manipulating friction to neutralize gravity.
Manipulating first.
Yeah. They use complex rigging systems involving high-tensile ropes and heavy-duty pulleys, which are often called rigging blocks. It's all about mechanical advantage. Instead of letting gravity dictate a free fall, which results in a massive shock load and collateral damage, they control the descent.
Okay, but how does that actually work in practice? Like, paint a picture for me.
Sure. Imagine a massive limb being cut. Before the cut is even made, it's tied off with a rigging line that runs up through a pulley anchored higher in the tree, and then it goes down to the base of the trunk.
Okay, I'm with you.
At the base, the rope is wrapped around a specialized friction device, like a porter wrap. By wrapping the rope around a steel cylinder, they create massive friction.
So the rope isn't just sliding freely.
Exactly. This friction absorbs the kinetic energy of the falling branch. It allows a single crew member on the ground to take a 2,000-pound dynamic shock load and lower it to the ground smoothly with just 2 hands.
That is wild. Just 2 hands for 2,000 pounds.
Yeah. The rigging equipment absorbs the violent forces, allowing the operators to guide the wood with extreme precision.
Okay, so through this engineered circus act of ropes, pulleys, and friction devices, the massive branches are safely lowered. The main trunk is sectioned and dropped. The commercial wood chippers turn the brush into mulch in seconds. The canopy is gone, and the immediate danger to your roof is solved.
Great.
But the process isn't over, because now we have to shift from the physics of the canopy down into the soil and ultimately into your wallet.
Yeah, the problem of the aftermath, specifically the root system and the stump left behind in the earth.
Leaving a stump in your yard is often treated like a landscaping oversight, isn't it? I always just thought a stump was an eyesore, or maybe like a tripping hazard if you're mowing the lawn and not paying attention.
A lot of people think that.
But according to this guide, lingering stumps are actually active biological threats to your property.
They really are, because that stump is dead wood in direct contact with moist soil. It is going to rot. And rotting wood in the ground is a beacon for wood-destroying insects, specifically carpenter ants and subterranean termites.
Ugh, the worst kind of guests.
Truly. They use that decaying stump as a staging ground. They move in, they establish a colony, they multiply rapidly in that perfect environment, and eventually they're going to exhaust that food source and march right across your yard looking for the next piece of wood.
Which is the foundation of your home. It's literally a subterranean highway leading pests right to your living room.
Exactly.
Not to mention, hidden surface roots will absolutely destroy your lawnmower blades if you clip them. So the professional solution presented is stump grinding. A specialized crew uses a machine with a massive spinning carbide-tip wheel to shred the visible stump and the major surface roots well below the soil line.
It essentially pulverizes the hazard, leaving the ground level and allowing you to reclaim that space for fresh grass or, a garden bed.
So what does this all mean? Wait, if the tree is gone and we know the stump is a hazard that attracts pests, why not just rip the whole root ball out of the ground to be entirely safe?
That's a common question.
Right. Why would I spend hundreds of dollars just to grind the top off and leave a massive deep root system to decay naturally in my yard?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture of your overall property health, full stump removal is incredibly destructive.
How so?
You have to understand that a mature tree's root system extends far beyond the canopy drip line. Removing the entire root ball requires bringing in heavy machinery, like an excavator, to dig deep into the earth. You are essentially tearing a massive crater into your yard.
Oh, wow. I didn't think about the machinery needed for that.
Yeah, and this completely disrupts the soil structure. The
Yeah.
heavy tracks of the excavator compact the soil, ruining its ability to absorb water. And even worse, if you have other healthy trees nearby, their root systems are often intertwined with the dead tree.
Oh, no. So you're pulling up their roots, too.
Exactly. Ripping out the dead root ball will violently sever the healthy roots, potentially killing the trees you wanted to keep. Stump grinding, on the other hand, is a surgical approach. It removes the immediate pest attraction and the physical hazard while minimizing collateral damage to the surrounding landscape.
And there's a brilliant piece of ecological science involved in the aftermath of that grinding, too. When you grind that stump, you're left with a massive pile of wood chips mixed into the soil. And the Yukon Home and Garden Education Center actually provides specific resources on this because wood chips have a very high carbon to nitrogen ratio.
Right. It comes down to the chemistry of decomposition.
Exactly. As the microbes in the soil begin to break down those carbon-heavy wood chips, they require nitrogen to do the work. So the microbes actually steal the available nitrogen from the surrounding soil, locking it up.
They're hoarding it.
Yeah. So if you just throw grass seed over fresh stump grindings, the grass will starve and die because there is literally no nitrogen left in the dirt. You have to actively restore the soil chemistry, often by adding a fast-acting nitrogen fertilizer to balance the pH and feed the microbes so your new plants can survive. It's not just physical removal, it's a complete ecological reset for that patch of dirt.
And all of this complex biology, the physics, the soil chemistry, it all brings us to the logistics of actually hiring someone to do this work. Because this level of engineering and ecological care requires specialized equipment and highly trained personnel.
And that comes at a significant cost, obviously. Depending on the size and location, a relatively small accessible tree might run you about $500. But if you have a massive compromised oak leaning over historic architecture tangled in power lines,
Yeah, it's a different story.
that complex high-risk extraction can easily exceed $3,000.
And this is exactly where property owners feel the financial pinch, and they might be tempted to cut corners by finding the cheapest possible option.
The classic guy with a pickup truck and a chainsaw who knocks on your door after a storm.
Do not fall for it.
Right.
The requirement for certified insured experts is non-negotiable. Organizations like the International Society of Arboriculture, the ISA, they exist to credential professionals who actually understand the physics of rigging and the biology of decay. But beyond the skill level, the real reason you avoid the cheap amateur is the mechanism of financial liability.
This is the part every homeowner needs to hear. Because tree work involves massive kinetic forces. If you hire an amateur, because they quoted you $400 cheaper, and they don't carry comprehensive liability and workers' compensation insurance, what happens when that friction rigging we talked about fails?
It's a nightmare scenario.
If that uninsured amateur miscalculates the load and drops a 2,000-pound branch through your neighbor's roof or crushes a car parked on the street, the legal concept of indemnification comes into play. The homeowner absorbs the full financial liability for the amateur's mistake. Your insurance is on the hook, and you can be personally sued for all the damages.
Exactly. Hiring fully insured professionals provides a legal and financial shield against that exact catastrophic risk. And, while we're navigating the legalities of property management, there is also the issue of municipal oversight.
Right, the permits.
Yeah. If the tree is entirely within the borders of your private residential property, you generally have the authority to remove it.
But there is a major catch there. You have to know where your property ends and the city begins. If that tree is sitting in the city right-of-way, like that swale or strip of grass between the sidewalk and the street, you likely do not own that tree. The city does.
Yep, you can't touch it.
Furthermore, if you live in a designated historic district, specific municipal permits and approvals are legally required before a single chainsaw gets fired up. You cannot unilaterally alter the historic canopy of the neighborhood without navigating the city's legal framework.
It's a lot. When you step back and look at the entire life cycle of tree removal, you realize you are managing an incredibly dynamic situation. We've traced the journey from the microscopic fungal mycelium digesting the internal heartwood to the immense kinetic energy absorbed by the friction rigging during extraction, all the way down to the subterranean chemistry of the decomposing stump.
We've gone from the canopy down to the roots. We've looked at the warning signs like the peeling bark and that sudden 15-degree lean. We've seen how invasive pests, like the emerald ash borer, turn vibrant wood into brittle, dangerous spaghetti.
Dry spaghetti.
Dry spaghetti, yeah. And we've seen how attempting to fight gravity without an engineering degree and a massive insurance policy is just a recipe for absolute disaster.
Which reinforces why proactive tree extraction isn't just, another frustrating line item on a landscaping budget. It is a critical, highly technical investment in your property's structural survival and your personal safety. You are managing complex biological structures that constantly interact with the climate, the local ecology, and the legal framework of your city.
It is a massive amount of information to process about something we just walk past every single day. But there is one final, incredibly fascinating detail we uncovered in the text. It's buried right in the frequently asked questions about the economics of all this. And it is a paradox that I honestly cannot stop thinking about. It has to do with how the homeowners insurance industry views these ticking time bombs.
Yes. The insurance industry has created a structural catch-22 regarding proactive maintenance.
It's so backwards.
It really is. Consider the exact scenario we've been discussing today. You have a dead oak tree leaning precariously toward your house. You have identified the shelf mushrooms. You know the interior is hollow mush. If you choose to do absolutely nothing and a severe ice storm rolls through, snapping that tree and completely crushing your roof, your homeowner's insurance policy will typically cover that catastrophic damage. They will pay the massive cost to rebuild the entire structure of your house.
Right. But if you try to be a responsible homeowner, if you realize the danger, call the ISA credentialed professionals and pay to preventatively remove that exact same dying tree before the ice storm hits.
Yeah.
The insurance policy rarely pays a single dime for the removal.
It's incredible. You are fully covered if you close your eyes and let gravity and decay destroy your home. But if you take proactive steps to prevent the disaster, the entire financial burden falls strictly on you.
It's a fascinating structural flaw in how we incentivize property safety and risk management.
It really is wild. You are financially penalized for doing the right thing, but bailed out if you wait for the worst-case scenario.
So the next time you pull into your driveway and look out at that beautiful ancient canopy shading your house, look a little closer. Look for the mushrooms. Look for the lean. Because that majestic piece of nature might just be a ticking time bomb waiting for the next storm.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Go inspect your yard. You definitely have a new perspective on what to look for.